like to reconvene to our afternoon session. And we'll move to item 37. Mr. Espinoza?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we're going to be going to our afternoon session today, this time at 1:30. This is item number 37 on our agenda, and this will be presented to us by our Auditor Clerk Recorder, Joe Paul Gonzalez, and he's going to be discussing with us the County Clerk certification of the Ban Fracking Initiative petition. Joe Paul?
Good afternoon, Chair, Board of Supervisors. Today before you as acting as your county clerk, on April 22nd of this year, proponents filed the initiative to ban well stimulation treatments and enhance recovery, such as fracking and steam injection, throughout all unincorporated areas of San Benito County, and to ban all petroleum operations in residential general plan designations in unincorporated San Benito County, and to make related zoning changes with the Department of Elections. Per Election Code 9115, a random sample of signatures were verified. The requirement for the initiative was based on the November 2010 election, where 16,420 voters cast the ballot. And of that 16,420, 10% is required for an initiative to be successfully placed on the ballot or to be presented before the Board of Supervisors. There were 4,180 total signatures filed on behalf of this initiative. The random sample, as required under Election Code 9115, was 500. So of that sample, 316 were found to be valid, and that's about 63.2%. But since they submitted 4,180 valid signatures, it was projected that 2,642 signatures would be valid or sufficient. And because the number of expected valid signatures exceeded 110%, the initiative is found to be sufficient. The petition is found to be sufficient. So before you today are three options that the board has in order to other than the acceptance of certification of the petition, is to one is to submit the ordinance to the board for adoption, and that the ordinance would be submitted and adopted unaltered, or two, that the staff might direct that this matter be dealt with at a special meeting held within 10 days for, that this matter be brought before you within 10 days so that the action might be adopted by the board. I'm sorry, that's actually Section A. Section B is that you send this ordinance to the Department of Elections for to be presented to the voters at the November 2014 election. And there is a third option that the board might take an action on, and that is that the board might direct that the county auditor create a fiscal report under Election Code 9111, and that report be brought to you no later than 30 days from today's date. So are there any questions that the board has at this time?
I have a lot of questions, Mr. Chair, but I can wait until after testimony from the public.
Okay.
Well, you're done with yours.
Yes, I'm available for any questions.
Okay, all right. So we'll open this up to the public.
This poem, More Drilling, More Killing, gets changed periodically because much of the prophecy in it has become reality. Without any further ado, I will now quote it for you. Those who take oil deep in the soil have used trillions of gallons of not just hot water. Prepare for a great slaughter. They poisoned the river flow down below, causing much life to no longer be so. They've been busted and can't be trusted. They paid a bill for an illegal spill and now continue to kill. Top props for poison crops those frackers achieved to receive. For goodness sake, all awake. This is no place to cause the earth to shake. Don't be dumbfounded blind to frack on a fault line, nor pimp Mother Earth like a whore. We don't need the wrath of her inner and outer core. If we continue stirring up 7,000 degrees of fiery hell, things won't be so well. Best be humble before a 9.0 rumble. Mr. and Miss Politician, do right in your position. Don't be like a Judas kiss and unleash the abyss. No sick lust for green is worth making Mother Earth mean, not to mention the use of cancer-causing benzene, which is already causing an ugly scene. There's much hidden chemicals fracking companies have not exposed. No wonder why several nearby have had a serious bloody nose. Think of all the drama that led to trauma from chemical warfare. This shall be similar if gets in the air. Do math, consider Mother Earth's wrath, hurricanes, massive amounts of rains, droughts all coincide. Laws of nature we must abide. Our governor may say he's green, but he's brown, and he's going down in history as a mother fracker is his legacy. Don't be a disgrace, for there's no worse place for fracking than California. Can't say nobody warned you. We came from the dust. Honoring our Mother Earth is a must. Yet she stands on trial. Don't be in denial. We should learn to be smarter than to crucify a martyr.
Members of the board, my name is Robert Perry. I represent Citadel. I apologize, our CEO, Armin Nabedian, was not able to be here today. We received our steam permit from the Department of Oil and Gas and Geothermal Resources yesterday, and we are leaning fully into commencing steaming as soon as possible at Project Indian. Yesterday, you were emailed, the County Council was emailed a letter from Mr. Nabedian. I'd like to read that to you. However, first I just want to note that we have entered into this with the county in the best of faith and have worked closely with you, and we're very disappointed by the turn of events in recent weeks. Just in the last 10 days or so, my client has been called a fascist. He's been compared to a drug dealer, and his patriotism and the fidelity of his combat service to this country in Iraq have been questioned by representatives of San Benito Rising. And that is a very unfortunate tenor to bring to this conversation. The letter reads as follows. Dear members of the board, Citadel Exploration is aware of a letter that was submitted to the county by the California Independent Producers Association, SIPA, objecting to the recently submitted anti-oil initiative. As much as we agree with the legal merits of this letter and the opinions of SIPA's counsel, we would prefer not to pursue an action against the county in a court of law. Our own legal counsel has agreed that, in addition to the claims that would arise from those issues outlined in the SIPA letter, potential additional claims beyond those in the letter are extensive. With this letter, we are hereby notifying the county that we believe this initiative is both illegal for the supervisors to adopt now or add to the ballot for a later date. By doing either or both, the county will accept liability for the actions of those authors of the initiative, and we ask that you not lay in the bed that these Jacobins have made. Citadel Exploration worked tirelessly and in good faith to provide the board input as it created an ordinance that enabled the county to address issues such as fracking and all the other available techniques and technologies used to produce oil. This initiative undermines the effort of the county and our company, and we take direct offense to its very existence. Citadel Exploration is committed to its promise to operate in an environmentally friendly manner that will bring economic growth to the people of San Benito County. We expect a commitment from the county to support Citadel in these efforts accordingly. Kind regards, Armand Abedian, CEO of Citadel Exploration. Thank you very much.
Honorable Supervisors, my name is Anne Marie Sayers. I live in Indian Canyon and have for some time, my entire life, but we can go back 4,200 years. Our mother is extremely important. Water is the blood of the earth. And water is all it is that we have. San Benito is rising up against fracking primarily because of water. We're in a drought, and it will continue to be a drought for many, many years, and then there's going to be a flood. And then there is a drought for 10, 12, 15 years, and then there is a flood. I like to share what I do with many college students that come to Indian Canyon, and that is before you make a decision, you think, how is it going to affect 7 generations in the future? I personally believe that fracking is not what it is we want. But you have the responsibility of representing the people who elected you. This is not a personal thing, it's what the people want. So I encourage you to put this on the ballot and to allow San Benito residents elect whether we have fracking in San Benito County or not. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I appeared before the board last year, I think it was in June, when the ACE group came up from Aromas. And my concern at that time, and it's still my concern, we talk a lot about water, but I'm concerned about seismic activity. And I think the misconception that we have, a lot of us, that the cyclic steam injection method that Citadel is about to engage in is a safe method. We live in a very seismic county. The state of California is very seismically active. In 1983, 31 years ago this month, in May, I think it was May 2nd, 1983, the downtown Coalinga, where cyclic steam injection north of the city of Coalinga occurs, experienced a devastating earthquake which completely destroyed Coalinga. Completely destroyed. They had to rebuild it. I even felt it here in Hollister. I was changing the oil of my pickup. I was on my back on Highland Avenue, and I felt the rocking. Well, cyclic steam injection was the cause of that earthquake. And I would hate for us to experience an earthquake here in Hollister of that magnitude. I would ask my wife if she could pass a study that came out of Redlands University. This study was addressed to the City Council in San Juan Bautista last month. But I think, you know, last time I got cut off, I don't want to get cut off this time, so maybe you could do your homework and read the study. I think it would be worthwhile. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Sarah Steiner, resident of Hollister. And my statement is that, yes, I think I represent a lot of people in saying that I am dependent on oil. I'm dependent on it for the car I drive. the food I eat and how it's delivered. You consider me a fossil fuel addict. What this initiative basically does by banning fracking is grants us clean needles. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Recently, the California Independent Petroleum Association's attorney, Manat, wrote a letter to the San Benito County Council threatening legal actions if any local efforts like this initiative interfere with oil production in San Benito County. And I've given copies of this letter. I don't know if you've, it's from Shoot Mahali and Weinberger. I was wondering if you could pass that out to the, oh, it was up here somewhere. Oh, maybe you already have it. Okay, great. So I wanted to read a little bit from this letter. Our attorneys have written it to correct several false and misleading statements in the Manat letter. First, under no circumstances would the county be liable to compensate oil companies, well owners, or royalty holders for any lost profits that allegedly may result from passage of the initiative. This is true both as matter of law and under the express terms of the initiative. The Petroleum Association's suggestion that the county would be forced to pay millions of dollars if the initiative passes is a baseless scare tactic. Second, the county and the voters have the clear legal authority to regulate oil and gas uses through the initiative. Of course, the state regulates this risky industry, but the legislature has never restricted local government's land use authority to decide whether oil and gas operations may occur. In fact, state law expressly recognizes this authority, and local governments in California have long exercised it. In conclusion, I urge the board to carefully read our attorney's letter and to put this ballot initiative on in November for voters to vote on. Thank you very much. Yes, oh, sure.
Good afternoon, supervisors. I was very disturbed when I read the Manat memo, because in California, we hold our democratic rights to be sacred. In 1910, Hiram Johnson, just, 40, 50 miles from here in Santa Cruz, at the Progressive Republican Convention, launched 3 reforms that made us one of the most democratic, small d, democratic states in the United States. The initiative, the referendum, and the recall. And those were all launched because our state had become captive to the Southern Pacific Railroad. Business interests had essentially squashed our democracy. And it was required for the people to rise up and create mechanisms to assert their rights over their future. Now, we too are at a crossroads. We have a bright future ahead of us in San Benito County. We have the highest percentage of organic agriculture in the state of California. We have a national park. We have 2 state parks. We have wineries. We have wonderful farms. We have historical cities, and we have a spectacular landscape. And none of those are compatible in the eyes of most people in this county with the idea of developing oil. I was the single biggest collector of signatures in this campaign, 410 signatures. I talked to people all across the county of all walks of life and persuasions. And it was overwhelming that people said, this oil development, cyclic steam, acidization, fracking is not something they want. They want their children to grow up in a clean community with clean water and security for their future. We don't need to invest and open the door for folks who will take their oil, bring it elsewhere, and leave their contamination behind. And the effort by the lawyers to send you a letter intimidating, misleading, is an effort to say to the people they have no say. It's an affront to our democratic rights. It's an affront to what Hiram Johnson launched in this state over 100 years ago. Don't succumb to that kind of pressure. Let the people decide. Thank you.
Supervisors and friends, thank you. I'm one of the signature gatherers also. I gathered, well, not as many as Andy, over 200 anyway. And people, we're all friends. There's no name calling. And this was democracy in action. But I had other motives too. I've seen what's happened to water. When I first arrived in this county, well, 60 years ago, opening that kitchen tap and drinking that water was wonderful. Sweet tasting, cool water. There was never a thought of buying bottled water or drinks of any sort. That water was enough to quench thirst. And in that short time, I've seen this wonderful water change. Taste change, flavor, chlorine added was never done before. I also live near Pacheco Creek, and we've had so many wonderful picnics and swimming picnics with the children in Pacheco Creek. The creek ran blue water, cool water. We knew all the holes. Some were good for diving. Now, of course, there's no water in that creek. There is some percolation. San Benito County allows percolation from the San Luis to keep the aquifers full for farming and agriculture. But our water is so critical, and it's so necessary. We all depend on good water, and I'm horrified with this idea of fracking. I'm just horrified. And I understand the chemicals in the water. They don't evaporate out. They stay. And they're just toxic. They put poisons in our resource, the best resource we have. Thank you so much.
Marty Richmond from Hollister. I assume you'll do whatever the law requires you to do concerning this. If the signatures are there and you have no other issues, I assume it'll go on the ballot, but I want to go on the record as opposing this initiative. Ms. Zenger came up here and said there's no name calling. I wish it were true. As soon as I said I opposed the initiative, people started calling me a puppet of the oil companies. Me, I don't own any land, I don't own any oil wells, I don't have any oil stock, and I probably have 1/10 the carbon footprint of almost everybody here carrying a sign. They're going to call me a puppet of the oil industries. We talk about being misleading. There's nothing more misleading than this proposal, which everyone says is about fracking, but when it was read by your own auditor, it turns out it's not just fracking. It's banning all oil recovery in any area zoned rural, not just fracking. There's talk about poisoning the water. There's no indication the water's been poisoned. You had the water people in here this morning. Did you see them saying, don't drink the water? It's poison. They talk about earthquakes. I guess they didn't read the scientific report on earthquakes that said it isn't the fracking that causes earthquakes. It's injecting the water back into the ground for storage. It was very specific. That was the National Research Council. That was Scientific American. They're not puppets. There's a bill passed in the state of California that has the entire state scientific establishment looking into this issue, and the report would come out in 2015 before this initiative would actually take effect. So why is it such a hot item now? I'll tell you why, and I wish this wasn't true. But the truth of the matter is the group behind this is not San Benito Rising. The group behind this is the Center for Biological Diversity, which is a radical group, a radical environmentalist group that wants to limit the oil, including all shale oil production, banned, and wants to limit oil extraction to 20%. That is not my story. It's on their website, and that website is linked to the San Benito Rising website that says that's where you should go to look about oil. Well, I went there, and I read what it said, and that's what it says. So I don't know, I don't want to kill it outright, whatever the law requires, if it needs to go to the voters. But I got to tell you this, it's not what it pretends to be, and unfortunately, some of the people here are just wrong. Others have other intentions. Thank you very much for your time.
My name is Demetrio Pruneda. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I came here thinking that the meeting was going to start at 1:30, so I wasn't going to speak, but now that I'm here, I might as well speak. I took a trip about a year ago to Washington State, and on the way back, I came through Lake Chastina, which is a man-made lake in Northern California, and I have property there. When I bought the property, I had a lake view. I could see the lake from my property. On the way back this year or last year from Washington, the lake disappeared. There is no water. I went through Lake Shasta. Lake Shasta was about 75% dry. We have a water issue here, and my issue with fracking is that fracking takes a tremendous amount of water, and the water that is used will forever be contaminated, and we cannot afford to do that. The issue with fracking for me is that it also has a great possibility of contaminating our aquifers. In San Juan Bautista, we have 3 wells. 2 of the 3 wells are already contaminated. San Juan Bautista cannot afford to contaminate the only well that has good water. The issue with me with fracking is that fracking contaminates the air that we breathe. We already have enough contaminants in our air. It's making people very, very, very sick. The issue with me with fracking is that it also has a high potential of contaminating the foods that we eat. So we have a lot of things to worry about when fracking. The only people that benefit from fracking are the people that will profit from fracking, and those are the oil companies and the handful of people that work for the oil companies. But the biggest issue for me is the future of our next generations. I'm about to exit here. I'm already 64 years of age. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here, but my concern is the future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nancy Amola. I'm from San Juan Bautista, and I'm also an attorney. First, with regard to Mr. Richmond's comments, this initiative does not ban all oil operations. It allows conventional
oil development, and it also provides limited exceptions for certain existing high-intensity operations. I'd like to make two procedural points. Mr. Perry, on behalf of Citadel, indicated that it would be illegal for this board to add this initiative to the ballot. That is incorrect. Under Elections Code 9118, this board is faced with three options. In fact, they're ministerial options. One acceptable option is to add it to the ballot without alteration. The second acceptable option is for the board to approve it without alteration. The third is to order a report, a fiscal report. And one small point with regard to the registrar's commentary, he's indicated that the turnaround for the report is 30 days from today. Actually, under Elections Code 911B, it's 30 days from the date of certification of the petition. That's April 28th. So the actual turnaround for any analytical report is shorter. It's not 30 days from today, it's 30 days from certification. And I think there was an ambiguity in that regard because originally Mr. Gonzalez had it right. In other words, his agenda transmittal referred to that date, which was April 28th. So in short, I urge the board either to approve the initiative as submitted, submit it to the ballot, or within its powers, order a report with turnaround of 30 days from April 28th pursuant to Elections Code 911 subsection B. Thank you very much.
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to address this item?
Good afternoon again, everyone. Christina Chavez Wyatt. I am a San Benito County resident, property owner, small business owner, mom, and executive director of the San Benito County Business Council. I'm here today to respectfully request that you order your fiscal report to be conducted as staff laid out as an alternative. And I believe that it should be conducted 30 days from the final certification of the signatures on the petition, not on the day it was submitted. But I'm not a layperson. I'm just a layperson. I'm not an attorney. I do want to point out, as I understand, there are currently no fracking projects proposed for our county, and I really want to make sure that we focus on these facts as they are presented to us from neutral parties, taking all points into consideration, because I refuse to let this issue tear our community apart. I'm in here for the long haul. I want to raise my children here. I want them to go to college, and I want them to come back here and have good jobs. I'm also concerned about the environment, the viewshed, et cetera, as we all are, and protecting the future of our community. I also want to ensure that we're learning from the Monterey County Planning Commission and the current discussion at their Board of Supervisors regarding their ordinance and potential action as we are considering here, and the threats of impacts on vesting rights of current oil producers within the county. Thank you.
My name is Victoria, and I live in Hollister, and I am not here pointing fingers, but I guess I could. Anyway, I think when I joined the San Benito Rising Against Fracking was not because somebody told me that I had to, but because I am concerned about this community. Since I've been in and out of this county, the politics haven't changed. So I'm here as a voter, allowing other people that can vote to decide once this gets on the ballot.
One last time, is there anybody else that'd like to address? If there's anybody else that would want to address, will you please fill out a yellow card and bring it up to the clerk at this time?
Yes, good afternoon, supervisors. Yes, I'm concerned. I think so many people have not read the initiative. And I mean, the initiative right there states we're doing things that are legal. We're not taking over people's property rights. And this is just concerning the new technologies, high-intensive fracking and steam and all of this. It allows conventional drilling. And the only thing that it's asking conventional drilling not be allowed by residential area. So that's what the petition says. Please, people, read it. And the other thing is economic growth. My goodness, we're in the 21st century, and there is sustainable, healthy jobs out there. The idea of money, 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 you know, health is more important than that. And so we've got to support the sustainable, healthy jobs, the renewable energy. And as far as another environmental group, whether it's Food and Water Watch, whether it's the Center of Biodiversity, well, thank goodness we have environmental groups that are balancing the businesses that want to take over and ruin our air and water. So I don't know anything about a 20%. I just know that we have enough oil production, and we need healthy jobs for our people. And we need change in our lifestyle, maybe not so many as 4 or 5 cars or just more and more, but just change and realize we're responsible for everything that lives on this earth. If it's not for our natural resources, we're not going to live. So that's why thinking of the seventh generation in front of us is very important for our children's sake. Thank you so much.
Okay, not seen anyone else bring up a card, I'll bring it back to the board. Are there any questions of the board?
I have some questions, Mr. Chair, if I could. But go ahead and go first. I'm not there yet.
Okay. Yeah, I have some comments I'd like to make. I'll go ahead and kick it off. And I say I'll go ahead and kick this off because I feel very passionate about this issue. And first I'd like to begin by saying, you know, I want to urge our board to put this forward, or to put forward this initiative to the November ballot. And I think on several occasions, I've made my position clear on this issue. You know, way back from when we had first, you know, when this was first on our agenda, when the concerns came out of Aromas, and I think it was 2012. And in my opinion, I think fracking is an extremely a dangerous gamble at this time, and it's a gamble that I'm not willing to accept. The potential risk to our environment is far too great, and scientific studies have not yet declared that fracking, that it will not and does not cause irreversible damage to our water supply and to our soil. There are far too many questions and, in my opinion, not enough answers at this time. The chemicals used may pose the significant health risks if they leak into our water table. Many of the companies who frack they won't tell us what kind of chemicals are used. However, we do know that many of the chemicals that they contain known the carcinogens. And there have been hundreds and hundreds of documented cases of water, the contamination next to areas where they drill gas, in particular on the East Coast. And with that, there are cases of sensory, of respiratory, and neurological damage due to ingested the contaminated water. And not to mention that large amounts of water must be used. I know it's been mentioned here this afternoon, but we are in dire need of our water at this time. You know, we are going through a prolonged drought, and it takes millions of gallons of water to frack a specific natural site, fracking gas, oil. And where exactly is this water going to come from? You know, and as a supervisor, I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to all the residents of San Benito County to do what is in the best interest of our entire county and our community. Not just a few wealthy landowners or people like Mr. Nabidian, oil executives. And for these reasons, I'll be campaigning hard to get this initiative approved. I want San Benito County to lead the way. It's about time we lead the way. And we're going to win this thing because it is the right thing to do, in my opinion. And I have something else I want to say to landowners who seek to have a profit from fracking, and to the executives such as Mr. Nabidian, who have tried to threaten and intimidate our local residents. Now, I hope you can start to be a little bit more honest with our community, because we're smart. The people who live here are smart. They care, and many of our residents who have lived here for generations. They love this community. They live here because it's beautiful and it's a very safe place to live, and they work very hard. And we don't want to see our natural environment plundered. We want to protect our county for our kids, and as you've heard here this afternoon, for their kids, for future generations. And to be honest, I'm sick and tired of all the talk about the need to frack every corner of our county in order to create jobs. Jobs, jobs, and jobs. That's all I hear from our local candidates that seek public office, from politicians who try to please everybody. And from what I've read, fracking creates a few poor-paying jobs, not good jobs. These are dangerous jobs where workers are exposed to harmful chemicals day in and day out. And perhaps we should visit some of the fracking sites in other parts of the country, because from what I've seen on TV and I've read in newspapers, these workers are living in temporary mobile homes. It's a barren wasteland in North Dakota. And once their job is done, they leave. They don't invest into their, they're not vested into their communities. Are these the jobs we want for our children? You have to ask yourself that. And I'm telling you one thing, my grandfather didn't work in the fields right here in San Bernardino County for 40 years to see his grandkids and to see his kids working in an oil field. We can do much better than that here in San Bernardino County. And with that, Mr. Chair, thank you for this time, and I look forward to voting for this initiative in November. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My mic is on. This is requesting a change to the general plan. So I need to ask if part of the fiscal report that, because I will be supporting to order a fiscal support, that'll be the direction that I'll be taking, provided that that fiscal report gives us what effect it's going to have on the general fund. Is this pertaining to elections costs? What exactly will this fiscal plan report give us? But I'm assuming that there will be some cost to the county, therefore I need to know what it might be and if there is.
If I can premise by saying, yes, the fiscal report is due from 30 days from April 28th, which would be May 28th. It would be due, but the board isn't limited to a fiscal report. It can utilize the offices of planning or public works or any other resources that they'd like under that election code to answer specific questions that the board may have. The fiscal impact report is limited to the effects of this initiative on what the likely fiscal aspects, what it would cause if this initiative was instituted in the county. As your county auditor, this would be something that we would have to contract out to a consultant that specializes in this kind of fiscal analysis, because this is a very esoteric subject that needs to have a specialization to be able to come up with some sort of a neutral fiscal analysis.
Will that cost will be the responsibility of the county, or will this organization pay for that cost?
No, the board would be ordering the cost. It would be borne by the county.
Okay. All right, and then the other questions that I have are that changing the general plan, it sounds like, we try not to have specific ordinances on our GP. It's more general. This is asking for a specific ordinance to be stated on the general plan. Do we not have, and you don't have the answer to this because it's probably planning, but don't we have an ordinance already that addresses fracking, and that we went through great amount of time to prepare it? And I don't support fracking, and I thought that our ordinance addresses it and protects the county from such activity.
I think as it pertains to the subject matter of the initiative, I would have to defer to either county council or someone from planning, somebody who could speak to that subject.
Okay. And I would want to find out if this is an ordinance, because this is an ordinance that
Yes.
it's going to be.
It
on
is,
general plan.
it is drafted as an ordinance
Right.
for either adoption by the board or to refer to election for the November 10th election.
Okay.
November.
But either way, whether
general
the
election.
board decides to move forward with this or the public on the vote of the people, it will still be something that would be adopted by the county and would have to change the general plan, and obviously there will be some cost to that. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that I have all the answers to these
Well,
concerns.
that's really, that question I think is more legal in nature
Okay.
than I can answer.
So, counsel?
So to answer your first question, you, I think, touched upon the general plan and what might be studied under the fiscal impact study that the board is considering. It's before the board today. So just looking at the statute 911, there's actually 8 areas that the fiscal impact study can study. One, of course, is fiscal impact. Another one is transportation, schools, parks, open space, business and the ability to retain business, agricultural lands, the impact on vacant parcels of land. And then on the general plan, it says specifically its effect on the internal consistency of the county's general and specific plans, including the housing element, and the consistency between planning and zoning and other limitations on county actions under various government code sections. So there is a portion of the fiscal impact study which will report specifically on how this affects the general plan.
Okay.
And in the ordinance itself, if the ordinance is adopted, it would go back and change the county's current zoning ordinance. It would supplant what is in there now, and as you mentioned, Supervisor Barrios, not that long ago, 2 months ago, we passed a comprehensive ordinance that addressed the issue of fracking. It did not limit the drilling in the same way or to the same extent or manner as the initiative would.
Okay. And then my other question is, it makes reference on page 553 to, I think it's 553, let me look at the page, 554, low-intensity petroleum operations and high-intensity petroleum operations. And does anybody know the state of California makes reference to these same definitions in their regulations? Because it appears to me that if we were to go forward with this and support it, that we are already in the low-intensity petroleum operation as a county, are allowing that. So what this would do is that it would allow the people that are already doing that, companies, to continue, but that it doesn't look like we can support any additional permits to do low-intensity petroleum. So I'd like to know if anybody has the answer to that question.
I mean, I can answer that. I don't write it. I'm not a
Thank you.
It defines, let me find the definition of high intensity. The high intensity includes things like steam injection, which is being used by the Citadel project. So the low intensity, it would, the other normal conventional productions, not including steam injection or fracking. Just straight, without using any of the enhanced.
Now, do
Let me
I
find the
understand-
definition that they actually use in there.
And the state of California does use those two definitions?
I don't think that they do.
Okay,
I don't, I'm not aware of them using those definitions, but I'm not sure. One way or the other.
And then my last question
And they do
is-
have a, I don't know whether you're aware of it, but they do have a vested amortization period of time, which is set forth in, on page 7, which is 553, which indicates that there's a 1-year amortization period after the effective date for high-intensity petroleum operations. And then, let's see, and then, so they have to bring all the land uses in conformity with the new policy within the 1 year, and then it can be extended on a case-by-case basis by the Planning Commission. And I believe it was 3 years for the low intensity.
And then the last question I have is on the residential.
Check on that.
I know that this objects to residential, which I do too, and I think most of us do, that residential is not a place for this sort of exploration. But I'm not sure that a home on 40 acres is considered residential because it's a residence. People live there. That's subject to interpretation, so I don't know how strict that would be. I wish I had a better definition of what residential is referring to.
I can, I don't have it with me right now, but I do have the list of zoning, in our zoning code, all the zones that the residential would include.
Okay.
It actually-
And the amount of land and residence per acre, that is, okay.
It actually says in the ordinance that the petroleum operations are prohibited in all residential land use designations.
So that would be, if you had one home on 100 acres, that would be considered residential then, perhaps?
Yeah, it says
Okay.
petroleum operations are prohibited on all lands designated rural, rural transitional, rural residential, rural/urban, and sphere of influence rural/urban within the county's unincorporated area. So
All right.
it's
So it
pretty
does-
broad
It's
definition.
pretty broad, okay. And obviously, we don't have a cost. If we're going to do the fiscal report, we would have to, can we do this in this short timeline? I mean, today's already the 6th, and we have 22 days to go through the process of hiring a consultant, and I don't know how doable this is. And I certainly don't want to go into it without knowing what the ramifications of such a huge undertaking.
I'm sorry, I just want to correct, I'm not sure about that 3 years for the low-intensity vesting period, so I just was referring to the high-intensity one.
Okay, thank you, Doug. You've given me some.
I'm not really sure with regard to, with your question, can we get it done in 22 days? That's a very, very short amount of time. Just to be able to find a consultant who would be willing to do it would, it takes quite a bit of time because, generally the consultants are already working on different projects and they schedule these studies way ahead of time before they actually start. So 22 days
We have to go out
is,
and advertise and get an RFP going.
well, it wouldn't,
Yeah, I
we
don't think
wouldn't
you need
have
to
a
use an RFP because this is professional services.
Oh, that's right.
So we could just go ahead and
we
contract.
can pick
Right.
a reputable,
Right.
okay.
I could tell you that we can, if that was the board's direction, we would come back at the, well, it would have to be a special meeting
Special meeting.
in order to bring the report back to the board.
And, Leopold, what does that, when we get the fiscal report, what does that do? We still have two options before us.
Well,
Either
that's
either
right.
send it to
It's
the voters or enacting it ourselves. The fiscal report doesn't really change our options.
it doesn't change. It doesn't really change your options as far as whether you could adopt it here at the board level, or send it to Department of Elections.
Mr. Chair. Supervisor Patella?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate all the concerns. Work on this, the county's ordinance a couple of years ago because of issues that, people in my district brought up and concerns. It was quite a enlightening experience. I learned a lot about oil exploration, fracking, and our role as well as the state's role. And, Supervisor Chairman Munzer and myself tried to put together as restrictive of a ordinance, county ordinance, as we possibly could. We were successful getting it passed by the board. We got kudos from all of you biodiversity people that are here today. Oh, there is none? Oh, you're friends and neighbors, that's right. You are. I recognize a great deal of, number of you as being my friends and neighbors. You're not from biodiversity. This is a local effort, and I certainly appreciate that. But one of the things I learned from the effort was the different types of techniques that the oil industry has in extracting gas and oil. And fracking is a major concern, not only with the amount of water that is needed for that technique, but also the chemicals that they use. And what I didn't know 2 years ago was that they are exempt from the Clean Water Act. And I just, as a citizen, could not believe it. And that, I think we all have a responsibility to protect that resource for ourselves, our community, and future generations. And I really blame the oil industry as far as why this has even become such a controversy that it is today in our entire nation. And another thing that I learned that was very concerning, I felt at the state level, is the Department of Oil and Gas. They we'll come out and check the oil field every once in a while. We'll try to get there. But with the intensity, the chemical uses, and the risk to the environment, they're falling way short. And I think the state has been very slow as far as propping that up to safeguard our communities. So, I appreciate your efforts and the work that it takes to get the signatures to place an issue like this on the ballot. And I think this is one of the easiest decisions for me today is to support the ordinance without alterations for the November 4th, 2014 statewide general election.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in the process of developing a third generation, right straight from myself to my son to my grandkids. And trust me, I thought being a parent was the best thing in the world. Grandparents are the best thing in the world. You get to hang around with the kids, and after a couple hours, take them back to mom. And I do appreciate that. I remember going to the store buying food. I came across some members of the community asking me to sign a petition, and I asked them, I am a county supervisor, and I will allow the public, to either sign it or refuse to sign it. And when you come to the board, I will support. Take it to the public for a vote. I think that's very important. I think we need to move it on it today. Take it to the public, let them decide, and hopefully in the process is all about education. So I will support it today. Thank you.
Yeah, just one more thing, that I think it's important that the public know what the cost is going to be. And I know that it's this additional cost to the county, but I think in fairness, like I said, I don't support fracking, but isn't it fair to let the public know what this is going to, the effect that this may have financially as well, even though health is much more important and all of the other things that are tied into it, but I just can't see doing it without really making them aware of the cost.
Well, if the board was inclined to have the fiscal report done, it would have to make that decision today. And it would have to be brought back to the board at a special meeting, on, I believe, May 20.
May 27th is
27th,
our special
yeah.
meeting, so for the budget review, we could put that on the agenda if we have to.
And that's assuming that we were able to find a consultant, and they agree to do it, and basically whatever the cost is what
And I've spoken to an attorney who, from Monterey, who used a consultant in Monterey to prepare a fiscal study. This was a couple of years ago, a number of years ago. So, but I would estimate you're probably looking at about $25,000.
But that's only for the cost. There is there to do the consultant, to
Yes.
hire the consultant, but that doesn't tell us what the cost is in putting this ordinance.
No, I'm just talking about retaining the consultant.
retaining
You're
the
probably
consultant.
looking between $20,000 and
Yeah.
$25,000.
Yeah, and I'm referring to what is this, what kind of cost is this going to
Right,
have?
the cost on the county and business
On the
or whatever,
county and-
that was what the consultant would be studying, and
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm ready for, to make a motion.
Before we do that, is there anybody else that has?
All right, Mr. Chair, I'll move that we accept, that this board accept the county clerk's, the certification of initiative, the petition to ban fracking, and 2, pursuant to Election Code 9118, submit the ordinance without alteration to the voters for the November 4, 2014 statewide general election per Election Code 1405.
Second the motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
No?
Okay, motion passes 4-1.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you, thank you.
Good seeing you.
Well, I can't tell you. You have to talk about what you know and don't get involved with what you don't know, because you'll stick your foot in it.
What's it going to cost? I don't know, but we're going to do it. You see what I mean? We're saying, okay,
Monday.
this is a great thing, do it, but the voters need to know that their taxes are going to pay, it's going to cost you this much money from the county coffers.
Mr. Espinoza?
Well, we're going to get the supervisor on it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'm not afraid of that. I just don't think that we should have your daughter or at least letting the folks know. But it's, you know, it's going to cost us money. It's going to cost us money. It's going to cost us real. But that's
We still have a lot to cover, and the day's getting... Mr. Espinoza, are we ready to move back to
Yeah,
item...
number 28, so that'll be coming out of council's
Yes,
office.
25. Are we ready to go back to item 25?
That's right.
Let me go get
Is that the one you almost opened?
Back to the
Is
future.
that the one you almost voted on?
Good thing you had nothing to do today, huh?
Okay. Okay. Look for the food we ate for lunch.
Yeah, okay. I know that one.
Should have put it on consent.
I need to give it to Janice. Yeah, give it to the clerk. All right, Mr. Chair, we're moving back to item number 26 per board direction. Actually, excuse me, 25, my apologies. And we're going to be passing out the wording that your board requested from HR, and we have Georgia here with that.
Good afternoon, supervisors. What the clerk will be passing you in just a moment is a package of 3 different documents. The first one is labeled at the top, original. It's what you saw this morning. I think we have some extra copies if anyone in the audience wants one. The second one is labeled option 1, and that was what Supervisor Dela Cruz had proposed. And the third one is labeled option 2, and that was what Supervisor Barrios had suggested. So as soon as you get that, I'll step through options 1 and 2 with you. So setting aside the original for a moment, if you look at page 2 of both documents, option 1 is a very simple solution with respect to what Supervisor Dela Cruz proposed, is taking off the equivalent. But there was subsequent discussion with respect to some kind of trade. And so in order to make that clear, I've redone and put the whole thing in a box in track changes, but basically it lists the education and experience. So the one pattern is graduation from college and 5 years experience or college coursework in human resources or certificate from human resources management from one of the colleges or universities with coursework that included public business administration, personnel administration, or a related field, and 10 years of experience. So the additional experience is tacked on there with respect to the education being a bit of a different pattern. Keep in mind, this is regardless of which way you go, whether that be with the original option 1 or option 2, this is the baseline minimum. Were we to recruit or have a recruiter recruit for this position, we can ask for more. This is just the baseline to allow you to be inclusive rather than exclusive. So with that, I'll shut up and take questions.
Georgia, maybe you said it and I didn't hear you because I was looking for it, but what's the difference? I don't see the difference between option 1 and option 2 and what Supervisor Barrios said.
Okay, that's okay. Focus on option 1 for a minute. That's, if you look, there's a very subtle track changes difference. And that was the issue that came up this morning from Supervisor Rivas with respect to the equivalent. And so this is stricken the word equivalent to. So if you look on page 2, in the center of page 2.
I get that.
So that is the only change in option 1.
Right. So what's the difference with option 2?
Option 2, there are 2 completely different patterns. The first pattern, that's why you have kind of 2 separate boxes and they're separated by an or. So the top box is exactly as you saw with respect to the education and experience in option 1. That's the top box. Takes off the equivalent. It has graduation from college. Doesn't have the equivalence words. The second box is relating to what Supervisor Barrios spoke of this morning with respect to substituting some coursework, a certificate, and then the 5 additional years of experience.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I thought I remembered, I was willing, I guess I'll just give it the way I feel. I was willing to go with option 1. As long as, to me, graduation really meant a minimum of 4 years of education. And I know that at a college, you can do a 2-year. I went to college, and then I went to San Jose State, so I'll be the first to admit it. I went to college. So I don't like that word college. I really will prefer university. So you can go that path, that way where you can get your general ed and your post education. So I know it's not a game changer. So if we can change college to university, I will feel more comfortable, Mr. Chair, if we change that word college to university.
That's a great point.
I don't have a problem doing that. Would it be better to say bachelor's degree?
Yes, I'll work that way. Okay.
That way we don't say BS, BA, whatever, just say bachelor's degree rather
Because
than the graduation. You don't get the bachelor's degree without the graduation.
You can have a 4-year college
Yeah.
without the name of university attached to it.
Yeah, that's true.
You know.
That's true.
I didn't finish, but that's where I was at a 4-year college that had the name college, not university.
So we would then say BA degree or
No,
Bachelor's degree.
from college, or bachelor's degree is
Bachelor's
college,
degree.
period.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only place you can get them. And some are colleges, some are universities. You have state universities, you have the UC system, you have private universities, private colleges.
Well, do we want to add from an accredited institution?
You could do that. I don't have a problem with that. The accreditation gets tricky because there are so many accreditation agencies these days. And again, keep in mind, this is your bare baseline minimum. What the board wants, we can do that. It used to be that there was a WASCA, Western Association, and then there was a Midwest and a South and a North and an East Coast, and that was the standard. And now they come in from all over, where you have foreign degrees, and you have to run them through different agencies to have them rated to see, okay, do they meet this equivalency with respect to the bachelor's degree? So those are some of the different things that can happen. So we can add that word. It's still very broad, but that would be the board's choice.
Any other questions at this point? Because the public has been given copies of this? Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to open it up, back up to public comment because of the changes that are before us. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. What's the wishes of the board?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we go to option 1 and change the wording to incorporate the bachelor's and remove college to university.
Second.
So before you go there, so this would be bachelor's degree with major coursework. Those would be the two
Yes.
words.
Yes,
Okay.
okay, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, take out the university. That's right, you're right. That's correct.
And I'll change the second.
He did.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No?
Okay, passes 4-1.
What is it, Margie, 4-1?
It's just that kind of a day.
All right. Let's move to item 28, Mr. Espinoza. Or
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ranger.
On April 17th, 2014, the county received a letter from Mr. Jeff Gillis of the law firm L&G that alleged a violation of the Brown Act that allegedly had occurred in connection with the removal of Supervisor De La Cruz from the Council of San Benito County Government's COG at the April 15th, 2014 regular Board of Supervisors meeting. This morning, the Board of Supervisors met in closed session to discuss this claim. And at that time, the board decided, as I reported out, to avail itself of the provisions of Government Code Section 960.1C2, which is the cure or correct provisions of the Brown Act, and in essence, retaking the actions that the board took on April 15th, 2014. It should be noted that per Government Code Section 54960.1F, the fact that the board takes this action to cure or correct an alleged violation of the Brown Act is not to be construed as or admissible as evidence of a violation of the Brown Act. So at this point, the board can discuss it amongst themselves, but at some point, the board needs to take the first recommended action, which would be a motion to remove Supervisor De La Cruz from his position as the county's representative on COG.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board members? Seeing none, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment on this?
Only in government, Marty Richard from House, only in government can you unring the bell. Okay, I think that's enormous. I don't want to start another fight, although I really should, but what I do want to mention someone who's not here in relationship to this very item, and it's germane because he has brought it up to you many times. Whatever happened to Joe Thompson? Joe used to come to every meeting, and one thing Joe always said was, you shouldn't send anybody to the COG meeting unless they had instructions from the full board. You remember that? Does that ring a bell, maybe? That's yes. Ring, ring, ring. And he said, someday you will regret not doing that. He's a prophet. Okay. So we have lots and lots of regrets to do. But, you know, it's politics. It's all about who wins. It doesn't matter what the truth is. You know, someone who with a legal degree can come up here, misquote me, no one cares, because that's the way politics are. You learn a lot of things in politics. You come in, you learn that it doesn't matter who your friends are. It doesn't matter who your enemies are. It only matters whether you get reelected. And unfortunately, too many of us have been put in that situation where we paid the price because people really want to win the election. Thank you for your time.
Richard Betancourt, 4140 Southside Road. I have to reiterate what Marty said. I agree with what the board was doing, but I also stand by Jaime in not backing off because he thought he was doing the right thing. So I have to stand on that, whether I think it was right or not. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. What's the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to remove Supervisor De La Cruz, even though I still like him as a person, from his position as county representative on COG, and to appoint Supervisor Munzer in that same position.
You want to?
Oh, I have to do it separately?
Let's do them one step at a time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the record's clear.
I'd do that separate then.
Okay.
I'd put a period.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
No.
Passes 3-2.
All right, Supervisor Patel, now you can move to number 2.
I'll make a motion to appoint Supervisor Munzer to the COG.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Passes 3-2. Now, I will make the motion to appoint Supervisor De La Cruz as the alternate to the for the county representative to COG. A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hey, was that a 5-0?
I had to say that.
Okay, passes 5-0.
See that? I told you I like you, Jaime.
I had to put some humor to it.
You threw me a curveball. I wasn't expecting.
That was funny.
All right. We're ready to move on to item number 29. Mr. Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Warrant item number 29 this afternoon. This will be presented to us by Alan Yamamoto. He's our Director of Behavioral Health. And this particular item is requesting your board the approval of signing a letter of supporting that CHISPA and the County of Behavioral Health waiver, granted a waiver by CalHEFA allowing 4 units to be built in the county MHSA housing funds at the proposed Chispa Buena Vista Road. So we have Ellen here. Ellen?
Good afternoon. I rarely put an item on regular agenda, and I'm putting this item on regular agenda, and I rarely come to you at this stage of asking for money from any entity that we're applying for money from. But this particular issue has actually caused some real challenges for me. There are 6 components to the Mental Health Services Act, and we have implemented 4 of those components since the Mental Health Service Act was passed. Community services and supports, workforce education and training, innovation, prevention and early intervention. We've pulled down all the money from those 4 components. We've implemented the programs. There are 2 components still hanging out there that need to be completed. One is called capital facilities. Those of you that have been in the circle through the years of discussing that particular issue with me know what the challenges are with that issue. That's not what I'm here to discuss today. The remaining component is the housing component. And this has also presented some real challenges, not just for me, but for many of my colleagues in similar small counties. And let me just do a snapshot back in history. In 2008, in fact it was May of 2008, I came to your board and asked permission to delegate our funding, our allocation that had San Benito County's name on it for housing to CalHFA. We had no other option. The State Department of Mental Health mandated that that be done or they would take the money back. What that effectively did is it encumbered the money. But we in turn then have to apply for the money back for our utilization to build housing in San Benito County. That has been an extremely arduous process for all small counties for a number of reasons. One, small counties got small allocations, and usually the entities that take care of the bulk of this work are large development agencies, and they have the money and expertise to go through the lengthy process because it's worthwhile to them because they're building very large projects. For small counties like us, we had approximately $878,000, of which only about $578 could be used for building, because one of the first quirky rules about this whole issue is you have to keep almost $300,000 in operating subsidies. So by putting this money in CalHFA, it almost seemed to me at times it seemed like running a gym business where they like you to pay the dues but they never want you to use the facility. So it's extremely difficult to get your money back, to use the money. So I think we have a situation now, and we're very careful about who we partner with. And Chispa has on the drawing board a project on Buena Vista Road, and it's going to be an 80-unit low-income apartment complex. I've been talking to them for several years about doing this. They've actually first thought about doing this project about 3 years ago. It's finally starting to take hold and come to fruition. We had a discussion recently. They have actually developed a project in Monterey County using MHSA housing funds. The real estate development director for Chispa said her staff were telling her, begging with her, please do not do this again because it's so painful to do and the pain doesn't go away. We kept talking and talking. They are willing to do this. And out of this 80-unit complex on Buena Vista, they're willing to dedicate 4 units to the MHSA project to be used by at-risk of homelessness or homeless MHSA eligible clients, mentally ill clients. In order to do this, they will complete their element of the development application, and we have a very large element also to complete. We've just run across our first hurdle in the process. In a rental housing project, which this 80-unit complex is considered, Cal HFA has a rule that you have to build a minimum of 5 units. We don't have enough money to build 5 units. So we are requesting a waiver for Cal HFA to allow us to build 4 units. So I'm asking for your support in signing a letter to that effect that will go in with our application. That will probably be only one of the hurdles that we will have to get over, because as I said, there are many. This project will take a while to bring online. I have a good feeling about it. I think we have a very good partner to partner with in Chispa. I think we can do a very good job of this. This is probably the best situation that's come around in the multiple years that I've been working and trying to make this happen. I'm hoping to get this done and get it completed.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alan, what's the dollar amount that this has, is going to be allocated for these 4 units?
The exact dollar amount
Just a rough
allocated
estimate, rough
in Sam,
estimate.
well, I have the exact amount. It's $878,600 was the allocation. Out of that, $292,900 could not be used for building. Has to be operating subsidies. So the net amount to actually build, $582,700.
Well, the reason why I asked that because is Jim here? Or, and I know Supervisor Barrios is on the intergovernment subcommittee, and they're actually thinking of some real neat outside-the-box thinking concept how to address homelessness in San Benito County. And maybe those funds can be used in conjunction with some of these great ideas, because my understanding is it almost takes about $3,500 to build a unit for a homeless person. And if you're talking about $500,000, you're talking a lot of units for our members of our community who are homeless at the moment.
But remember that they have to, if I could, Mr. Interject, is that they have to be customers of mental health. They have to be providing or
It has to be
receiving
permanent
services.
housing, and it has to be permanent housing for the seriously mentally ill and for the seriously mentally ill
Yes.
that are at risk of homelessness or homeless.
Just trying to think, maximizing the dollars.
Yeah.
It's a good idea, but we've already, we kicked
We've
that
been
can
down this
already.
road many times and had the discussion many times,
tire.
and that is the odd thing about trying to pull this money down. It has so many little intricacies in the requirements.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Harris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Alan, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for moving forward with this. I think this is really thinking outside the box, even though I know you've been talking about it, but you probably were ready to give up because we couldn't afford 5 units. But now you're trying a different avenue, and that's a great thing. So I hope we're successful. I will support it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will open it up to the public. If anybody from the public would like to address this item?
Good afternoon again, Christina Wyatt on behalf of the San Benito County Business Council. I've had the great fortune of working with Chispa on a couple different community projects. Most recently, as Michael Rose referred earlier this morning, on the San Benito, or on the too many organizations and places I'm working on the Salinas General Plan Economic Development element. It's great to have them here as a partner and working with us, and I think that making this decision and working with them and seeing their generosity will really help to benefit our community moving forward. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. What's the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone
Thank you.
opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Alan. We'll move on to the next item. Jeff Espinoza?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we're on item number 30 on our regular agenda. We have Lisa Reinheimer here. She's the Director of Council of Governments that will be discussing with your board the adoption resolution supporting the City of Hollister's active transportation program, Safe Routes to School grant application with the California Department of Transportation for funding of the Activating Safe and Equitable Connections in West Hollister project. So we have Lisa here to give, looks like a presentation.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and
You
supervisors.
dump about half the slides.
I'll try to. I'll go quickly through them. I have to say that I'm really excited about this project, and I know that at least 3 of you have heard about it already, so it might be a little bit of repeat. So my name is Lisa Reinheimer, Executive Director of San Benito COG, and what I'd like to do is get your support by way of a resolution today for a great project that San Benito COG has partnered with the City of Hollister on. And so there are a lot of different parts to this, so let me just kind of make sure that you see the big picture here. And I will say that I am skipping through a lot of what I was planning on saying for the interest of time. I will give a little shout out to Supervisor De La Cruz, though, because he's been advocating for improvements on the west side of Hollister for a long time. And it was at his urging and his, I don't know if I could say this, nagging for improvements out there that this project is actually coming to fruition. Okay, I'm glad I can say that. So I was successful in getting a grant of $30,000 to look at the Calaveras schools area, the Aro Hardin and Calaveras schools area. There was a Dunn Park collaborative initiative that was going on. There were some common issues surrounding the school, so it made really a good confluence of events to move forward. And I was able to make the case for this area because it is underserved, an underserved community with large household size, low college education rates, high unemployment at the time in January of 2013, and hopefully that has changed, and free or reduced school lunches for many of the students. So Safe Routes to Schools is really an approach to making the school commute safer, both to and from school, by encouraging kids and parents to have their kids go to school by way of walking or bicycling, scooting even. And we tackle this in a 5-pronged approach called the 5 E's: engineering, education, encouragement, enforcement, and evaluation. So we like to do these safe routes to schools because it really provides for safety and comfort of both the students and the parents. There's a certain amount of safety in numbers when students travel together to go to school, chaperoned by a responsible parent. There's certainly a health aspect of getting your kids to school in an active way, getting part of that 60 minutes of exercise a day that kids need. Helps build some community around the school, getting parents more involved, and finally it gives folks a choice. They don't necessarily have to always get in their car, or they don't always have to get on their bicycle, but it gives them a choice on how to get to school. So in terms of timeline, we've done an extensive amount of work starting in September of last year, but we are here in phase 3 of our work, presenting to folks. The Council of Governments, the Hollister School District Board, and City Council have all been able to see this presentation. And I don't really intend for you to be able to read this, but it is an indication of the projects and programs that we're looking at in terms of engineering recommendations. We're looking at things like bulb outs at intersections, and I'll get to that in a minute. High visibility crosswalks, putting in sidewalks where there are none, looking at, let's see, bicycle lanes in and around the schools, and there's an extensive list of projects in your packet. So this one's for Calaveras, there's another one for Aro Hardin Elementary. And we developed all these projects really by taking some good observations around the schools, both during the commute in, the drop-off time in the morning, and also the pickup time in the afternoon. And I will say the pickup time in the afternoon is really the most challenging one, because when you're dropping off your kid, you just drop them off and leave, but when you're picking up your kid, you're waiting around a little bit more, so it creates more of a congested area. So this is a bulb out, and what it does is it shortens the distance. So let's see, does this have a thingy? Oh yeah, maybe not, never mind. Anyway, it shortens the distance where folks have to cross a crosswalk. It extends out the curb So, and it gives a little bit more refuge area so that kids and adults, old, young, in the middle, can get across a little bit more safely. And then the high visibility crosswalks, I'm sure you've seen those before. Those alert drivers to the fact that a pedestrian, a walker could be, or is expected to be in that crosswalk. The next E that we look at is education. This is an opportunity to let kids know what the proper way of crossing a street is, or any number of given traffic safety laws. It's an opportunity for folks like this to do practice runs with kids, look left, right, left before you cross the street so you don't get run over. It's really important that the kids know how to and have the confidence to be able to walk to school in groups in a safe manner. The next one is, the next E is encouragement. And I am going to do a shameless promotion, and knowing it, this Thursday is, we already actually do a lot of this stuff, but this Thursday is Bike to Work and Bike to School Day, and we've partnered with the Hollister School District and all the schools in the school district for Bike to School Day. And we've had a really successful program, over 500 kids gearing up and getting excited about bicycling to school, and the parents love it because, you know, it's something new and different. And we have a free breakfast, and there are prizes. We give away helmets. Some lucky person gets a free bicycle. So we're doing some of this stuff, but it could be enhanced. There are some really neat programs out there with other Safe Routes to School programs across the nation and the state where folks do walking school buses. That's kind of like a school bus, but a parent walks at designated locations to safely bring a bunch of kids to school. Or bike trains where the same type of thing can happen. And then there are a number of different encouragement opportunities available to us as well. Enforcement is a really important aspect of this too, because speeding, especially along Buena Vista, is a problem. And so one of the things that we look at are speed feedback signs. I'm sure you've seen them. You're going down the road and the flashing speed feedback sign says you're going, 38 in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. Well, that's really important for motorists to understand that if they're in a school zone, they really need to slow down. And so that would be one aspect that we'd be looking at for Buena Vista Road. And then also doing some crosswalk stings, enforcement campaigns with the Hollister PD or CHP, whoever. CHP does a lot of that stuff. And then enhancing the crossing guard situation as well. And then finally, the last E is evaluation. This is where we try to gauge how we're doing. But more importantly, as part of this project, we did a parent survey. And what we found was that the top 2 reasons that people were concerned about sending their kids to school by walking or bicycling was the safety of intersections and crossings. So we included a lot of intersections and crossings in our plan to address that concern. And then the lack of crossing guards was the second. So we included that as well in the plan. So in terms of the next steps, and I'm almost done, the Hollister City Council approved a resolution for a grant application here today here at the Board of Supervisors to ask for your support as well. And then after that, we want to just keep the momentum going and see if we're successful in an active transportation program grant that's new to the state of California. We're asking for some money for the West Gateway project, as well as this Safe Routes to School project, because the West Gateway project has a lot of components of what we're looking at: bicycle and pedestrian features, transit, roundabouts, etc. Combining the 2 projects really enhances our ability to show a comprehensive plan for the west part of Hollister. And the West Gateway area, 4th Street, bridges the gap, or bridges the divide, if you will, between Calaveras and R.O. Hardin School. So we felt like combining the 2 projects into what we're calling, so my staff are very creative, what we're calling the Activating Safe and Equitable Connections in West Hollister project. So what you have before you today is a resolution supporting a grant application, combining these two projects, and the application is due in May 21st. So we'd really like your support, and I'd like to thank Jaime De La Cruz, Supervisor De La Cruz, for all of his support on this project. It's been really helpful. So with that, I'll stop and answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chair, I got a quick question. Lisa, on the resolution, the whereas, there's a list of items. It's actually on page 414 for my fellow supervisors. It has the 2009 San Benito County Bikeway and Pedestrian Master Plan. Does that incorporate the bike path on Buena Vista Road too?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, that bike plan includes everything.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Well, thank you, you and the staff and everyone else for doing a good job, and hopefully we do get the money.
I hope so.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve resolution number 2014 39.
Second.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we're on item number 31 this afternoon. We have Mandy Rose, our Director for Integrated Waste Management, and she will be presenting a report or receiving an annual rate adjustment notification from Recology San Benito County. Mandy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is my annual visit for this specific topic. As most of you are aware, in the Recology contract with the county, they are allowed to use specific indices and provide us with that information for a COLA each year. There was one time, if you'll recall, in the past where the rates did go down. I think it was about 20 or 30 cents. This year they happen to be going up. I believe it is. It's in your packet. Let me look at that to make sure I give you the right number. And this is just speaking about the residential side. What are we talking about? They will go up 18 cents. That's the average on the residential side, and I believe it's $1.25 or 30, obviously incrementally up as the commercial bins increase for their rate increase. So I'll answer any questions you may have, and Phil Couchet, who I don't think has seen his family or his wife since, I don't know what time this morning, has been waiting, is also here from Recology if you have any questions of him.
Is this the one, Mr. Chair, that was done by committee, or is it the next one?
It's the next one.
No, the next one, okay. This is the set per the CPI.
Correct.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, anybody from the public like to address this item? Seeing none? One advantage to coming in so late, there's nobody left in the public to discuss it. I guess this is just a report, is it? To receive
Yes,
report.
this is to accept the report. There will be a letter that goes out from Recology a minimum of 30 days prior to the implementation, which is effective July 1.
Okay, so when we're ready to move on to the next item.
Yeah, the next item is item number 32, and this is with regards to COLA changes for the landfill, and we have Mandy Rose here again as well to discuss this.
This item is, as you're all aware, I requested an ad hoc subcommittee to assist with this, as we have done in the past. Again, in the landfill operating agreement, there is also a section that allows for a COLA each year based on specific indices, and they can also come to us when there are changes in law. So this year, the total of both the COLA and the change in law costs was a total of $259,971.78. We reviewed both of those things with the ad hoc subcommittee of Supervisors De La Cruz and Rivas, and the recommendation from that committee was to request the full board consider making a payment, as we have budgeted $250,000 for this purpose, and the balance of the $9,971.78 would come out of the landfill operating fund. So again, if you have any questions of myself or the subcommittee members.
Are there any questions from the board?
I'd like to hear from the ad hoc committee, just
Yes.
they're recommending it, but
Yes, we met, Supervisor Rios, myself met with Mandy, and after going over the numbers and what we did in the past, we felt that this is justifiable at this time, knowing that the economy was going to start picking up a little bit, but holding back still the full increase. So we do recommend it.
Okay. Mandy, what was what type of change in law were there?
It's called a preferential pathway, and then there's greenhouse gas emission under AB 32 for the landfill. Preferential pathway is where the section of the old landfill that is not lined comes down into the new landfill, which is lined, and we have to line that side area so that when it rains, I know we're in a drought, but when it rains, any of the runoff will run onto the new liner section. And that is a new requirement of the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and we have paid for some of those costs. This is just as, if you imagine the end of the landfill towards the Class 1 coming towards the scale house, we're gradually paying for pieces of it moves that direction. And then the AB 32 issues have to do with landfill gas emissions, and there's actually a very small portion, I believe it's 13-something thousand this year. The substantial piece will come this next year because we're going to be installing 25 more landfill gas extraction wells. So there was just a piece of the planning part of that that's in this particular request.
You know, and we did ask about, is there different alternatives that can lower the costs besides the material that they requested for? And Mandy says that, they did do the research, and this is the best type of material out there.
I'll open up to the public. Is anybody from the public like to address this?
Marty Bishop-Hollister, I assume we're extracting methane. How much more methane do we have to extract before we have enough to sell, or are we selling what we have now? Thank you very much.
I appreciate the question, because we do get asked that a lot. Right now, we are at, I don't know if this means anything to you, Marty, but we're extracting about, I think on average, 200 to 210 cubic feet. That is not enough to be economically viable for anyone to be interested in taking our gas, converting it to electricity. But once we install these additional wells, we should be in the neighborhood of 450 to maybe 500. And we are already in preliminary discussions with trying to find out who else or who is out there that wants to talk to us, because we will finally be viable for that purpose. So I hope to have something that I can bring to the board within the next, once they're installed, once we've got some history with the extraction, we will be talking to some firms that may come forward and want to use that gas. There's also the possibility when the RFP gets done that there's a business that chooses, if the board so chooses to take that company, they may want to use landfill gas. I have been in discussions with one company that definitely wants to, and part of our environmental document does address the fact that we can bring the pipe over to be able to provide electricity to businesses over there. Nice try. Nice try.
Well, Supervisor.
Yeah, I think if we have collection devices attached to our cattle down in South County, we probably have enough methane to make it economically viable.
Yeah.
Who applies for him? What do you call that job?
Well, it's according to our general plan.
I think one of these days we need to clarify what that really was about, because it was not what got reported. So, yeah, we won't go there today. You guys are tired. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, actually, we're still in the public comment. Anybody else from the public like to address this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the ad hoc subcommittee's recommendation of paying the fiscal year 2012-2013 COLA and change of law costs to Waste Connections in the amount of $259,971.78.
Okay, we have a first and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're on item.
Rosa?
Yeah, we're on item number 33. Staff is requesting the adoption of CEQA findings set forth in Attachment A to AIT, as well as recommending the board to adopt the resolution of intention to amend Chapter 25.45. So we have Byron Turner here from our planning department.
We're requesting that the board adopt a resolution of intention to amend Chapter 25.45 of the San Bernardino County Code. If adopted, then we're going to bring it before the Planning Commission and back to the board for final approval. This has to do with generally the public noticing of zoning amendments and the process and procedure. It's going to streamline the process. It won't affect a whole lot of projects, but the ones it will streamline the process and align us with state law with regard to public noticing on zone changes. So it's recommended the board adopt the CEQA findings set forth in Attachment A to the AIT, and then adopt the resolution amending the resolution of intention to amend Section 25.45 of Title 25 of the San Bernardino County Code pertaining to amendments of the zoning code and rezoning.
Any questions?
Just to change the dates on the resolutions. It's dated 2000, and they're both dated 2013.
Okay.
We'll just change them to 14.
In 2013.
I'll open this up to the public. Anybody from the public like to comment on this?
Mrs. Jones.
Seeing none, bring it back to the board.
Move to approve for staff recommendation. Resolution 2014-40.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. And on to, I believe, what will be our last in the regular agenda.
Okay. This item, similar to the last item, is the adoption of a resolution of intention to amend a section of the San Bernardino County Code, this time regarding use permits. We're recommending that the board adopt this resolution to amend Section 25.43.008, which will then bring before the Planning Commission and back to the board for final approval. What this intention is to automatically extend the life of use permits that have been approved but yet acted upon. We made a similar amendment a few years ago to, in order to catch up with the economy, to allow use permits that typically would expire after 1 year without construction to continue to be extended until such time that it's economically feasible for them to go ahead and construct, and that they don't lose their entitlements. So this is essentially a similar, the same resolution. So it's the recommended that the board adopt the CEQA findings set forth in Attachment A of the AIT, and adopt the resolution of intention to amend Section 25.43.008 of Title 25 of the San Bernardino County Code pertaining to the term of use permits. I and Barbara are here for any questions.
Okay, are there any questions?
And the dates noted.
Yeah, no, but I have another question. On these use permits, these are just applications that are extended. If somebody has already received and been approved, does it also extend there?
Yes, this is intended to affect the approved use permits.
So these are approved. So now what happens to all the, usually within that year, they have to abide by certain criteria in order to get extended. What are we doing with that? Is that being done? Are we having staff check to make sure that they have met all the
Well, yeah, in order to begin their project, they have to meet all their conditions. One of the standard conditions, though, is that it expires after a certain period of time if there's no action taken on it. This extends that period of time before that use permit expires.
Oh, okay.
So if they're unable to, for whatever reason, unable to meet all the conditions of approval in that time frame, this gives them more time.
So they do have an extension of time to meet those conditions?
Yes,
Okay. Well, I'm thinking, along the lines of traffic and that the critical conditions that
They still are required to meet all the
still
conditions.
required.
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right. Any questions from the public?
I'm Marty Richard from House. Is that extension unlimited? If we pass this, does that extension just go on and on and on? Can I
No,
answer that before I make further
it has a timeline
comment?
of December 31st, 2015.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I did not get a chance to read that
Yeah.
particular. So it does have a date certain?
Yeah, it has a
that
sunset.
those would expire?
Yes.
Great. Then I have no objection. Thank you. I support it.
Anybody else from the public like to comment? I'll bring it back to the board.
I'll make a motion to approve 2014-41.
Okay, there's a motion to approve. Yeah, second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, well now, if I could have council review or talk about the two closed session items.
Into closed session to discuss agenda items number 35 and 36 on today's agenda. The board will confer with legal counsel regarding existing litigation pursuant to subdivisions A and D1 of section 54956.9 in the case of Ronald Rivkin versus Adam Zwadowski, Kate Bentley in the county of San Benito, filed in the Superior Court of California in the county of San Benito under case number CU-14-0049. And in regards to agenda item number 36, to confer with its labor negotiators, the agency designated representatives are Dania Torres Wong, Ray Espinoza, Joe Paul Gonzalez, Melinda Casillas, Allison Huck, Georgia Cochran, Mark Gregerson, and we're going to add Jim Ridingswords to the list of agency designated representatives. The employee organizations involved are Management Employee Group, Institutions Association, SEIU Local 521, the General Unit Employees, SEIU United Long-Term Care Workers Local 6434, Law Enforcement Management, Deputy Sheriff's Association, and the authority to meet in closed session is found in California Government Code Section 54957.6. Thank you.
Is there anyone that'd like to address the board on these closed session items? Seeing none, we'll adjourn to closed session.